Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It. Thank you very much for your participation, whether you are here with us right now or watching it later. Today, we'll be talking about the challenges of teaching globally. If you have any questions to ask, please write them in the comments section. It's important to begin with the principle of disbelief as usual, right? Don't believe in anything, not even in what we say here in our talk, in our program. Experiment, have your own experiences. To talk about the challenges of teaching globally, let me introduce you to our team today. Cicero Schoenemann, a volunteer from ASSIPI in Germany. Welcome back, Cicero Schoenemann.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Very good. And we have today two international participations. Evelyn Malzani, volunteer of ASSIPI in Sweden. Welcome back, Evelyn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mario.
And also Jacqueline Cowan from CAEC. Welcome back as well, Jacqueline Cowan.
Thanks, Mario. Happy to be here.
Very nice indeed to have you together with us again. Our debate is based on conscientiology, what it is. Conscientiology is a neuroscience that studies the conscious as a whole, right? What is a conscious? Conscious is me, is you, each human being on earth. Our studies of consciousness, of the consciousness as a whole, are based on the consciential paradigm, right? Which is focused on 7 pillars: bioenergies, multidimensionality, as we as consciousnesses, right, manifest in multiple dimensions, pluri-existentiality, as we have had many lives so far, self-research, to understand ourselves and to know better about our intraconscientiality, cosmo ethics, this ethics that goes way beyond the ethics made and created by human beings, universalism, and holosoma, the 4 vehicles that we manifest with. Conscientiology has more than 20 conscientiocentric institutions, each of them specialized in one specific subject of research. ASSIPI, which stands for International Association for Interstitial Parapsychism, is specialized in the study, research, development, and practical use of parapsychism, an indispensable attribute for consciential evolution. And ASSIPI in English is a project, right, with ASSIPI, and it's engaged in the internationalization of conscientiology and is focused on promoting the study of parapsychism worldwide. Let's get started with our talk today. And I would start by saying that teaching globally presents a set of challenges such as language barriers, educational context, cultural differences, and communication methods that may go way beyond that we usually have in our own language. When we have different nationalities in the classroom and communicate in a single language, our attention should go far beyond the content only, right? We should go and pay attention to more of these issues like cultural and things like that. How to get the message across when we have different students from different nationalities. It's very challenging indeed. And I would like to start this conversation today as we have two international volunteers here. I really like to start the conversation by asking Evelyn, how did you, Evelyn, first hear the content of Conscientiology, and how did the content of Conscientiology sound to you when you first heard it in the classroom? If you heard it in the classroom or in a book, how was your experience in meeting Conscientiology, Evelyn?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a searcher basically since the 1980s, knowing that there's something beyond the apparently visible and apparently explainable. So I've been searching for many, many years, and it wasn't until I think it was 2006 that I was working here in Stockholm, and a colleague of mine was a volunteer. Well, no, she wasn't a volunteer, but she was interested in Conscientiology. Just explaining it to me, so explaining the theory, and explain concepts. And it sparked something in me, so I immediately booked myself to an intensive course in London. This is 2007, so that was a week at the time. So it was the basics, basically of Conscientiology in a week, and I had experienced a week full of aha moments. You know, it was like, yeah, this all makes sense. And basically in 1 week, the answer to most of the questions that I have asked myself throughout my life. So then on, of course, I was more interested. So I continued attending classes in both London and Portugal. And then later, 2014, I went to Brazil for the first time.
Great. Jacqueline, how was it for you when you first heard of Conscientiology? Or were you in Brazil already, or still in Australia?
Yeah, so actually, I found Conscientiology in Australia. And it's interesting when Evelyn was talking about the dates, you know, for me, the end of 2006, you know, I first found Conscientiology and did the course by way of my sister, actually, because my sister, it's an interesting story. She'd just come back from India, and she'd been given a book on astral travel, and then she was talking to us about it. And so for me, it was the idea of, the out-of-body experience that really caught my attention. And then, she saw how interested I was in it. And for some reason, I think inspired by the helpers, she found this course in Sydney and then asked if I wanted to attend. And I remember just, going there and just, everything just made so much sense. It was like, and for me, I was just, even though the teachers, like one teacher was native English speaker, and the other was Brazilian, and she wasn't able to speak fluently, but I was able to capture all the ideas. I felt like it all made perfect sense. So and haven't looked back since.
I see. This is one of the topics that we're going to cover today, which is the language barriers, and that's a very sensitive topic, right? As we are trying to be accurate in our ideas. When we want to have our ideas crossed, we have to be more accurate in what we say, and this is one of the challenges that we'll be talking about today, right? Cicero, you are almost a German native, aren't you?
I'm living here in Germany, so I'm Brazilian that's living here in Germany, and of course I have faced to many aspects related to both culture and language. So also when giving classes. So I think these are important aspects, and I really think the most relevant is really the culture. Yeah, the culture, because there are many aspects related to the ideas, the knowledge, and things like this. But of course, the language, I could say, is the first barrier. Yeah, it's the first thing that changes, because I could say, for example, in my case, my mother language is Portuguese, and when I speak in English, I could say I'm more or less fluent in English, okay? But when it comes to give several synonyms to explain better in more detail some information, I perceive I'm still have lack of transmitting the information with some different approach. Because for some people, they will get the idea according to some specific word that will touch, that will make sense, that maybe that person associates that word with a previous experience. And these, of course, are some barriers that we are trying to bypass, to learn, to study. So it's something that I could say is a challenge for a teacher to be updated to the idiom, to learn more, to get more information, things like this. I don't know. I'm not sure if I got your original question about that you mentioned about German. So if you could repeat it, please, or
No, I was just calling you to say something about this, approach that we are giving to. How is it to hear conscientiology for the first time? Because actually, there in Germany, we also have lots of people who are adhering to the ideas, right? We have lots of students, and the participation in Germany is really increasing. Then I have to highlight the work that Regina Chud is doing there, right, with Isaac, which is very, very good. So I had met these people, back in the 2013 when I was making a documentary at CIEC.
yeah.
And your wife was there as well, Cicero.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that was
You interviewed her. Yeah.
I interviewed her.
So
Yeah, that's right. So that was the first time I met Regina and Jorn and all these guys. So they've been doing a fantastic work in Germany, and it's really growing, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that what impression do you think, by your experience living in the country for such a long time, what is your impression towards the German approach to conscientiology, or their interest in the topic?
Yeah, I could say there are many things, and maybe not only restricted to Germany, but I think many other countries different from Brazil, maybe they have more or less similar issues or similar aspects. So there are different points of view on how to understand some concepts of conscientiology that maybe in Brazil people think it's more automatic, or it's common to be a little bit more automatic, a little bit more common for the society to hear about spirits or other extra-physical consciousness. In some other countries, it's like that, at least here in Germany, maybe in some others, people don't talk in the street about extra-physical consciousness. In Brazil, you can talk also with people related to religion or other knowledge. Just you can just talk, no problem. If the people don't like, no, it's also not a problem. But it will not cause a problem to you many times if you just talk. Of course, you cannot be talking, but and this, of course, when you are in a class, it makes a big difference. Sometimes it's not a new subject for the students, because the students, for example, like the explanation that Evelyn did, yes, she was already looking for. But many students, they have knowledge, they have been studying, but it's not too common for them to interact and just talk normally, like a normal subject that we can talk about football or some other thing. We can also talk about extra-physical consciousness, multidimensionality. So this is one, I could say one first point, but there are many other aspects. So this, I don't know if this could be the same also for other perceptions for Jacqueline Also, Evelyn.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, at least in Australia, right? Like before I came to conscientiology, I always talk about there being it's like a vacuum. There's just a void of information about these topics. It's just not normal for people like to talk with each other like in society. Or I mean, I'm sure you've got these new age groups, these small groups, but you don't see it in the news. You don't see it, present in society. And so before I came to conscientiology, I was like a skeptic. The culture really had influenced me in that regard. And so it was this transition that I took in starting to open up to this other reality about 6 months before conscientiology. But yeah, it's definitely different.
And Evelyn, I would like to ask you something that I'm curious about it, right? For example, as Evelyn said, skepticism. So do you feel that even though, okay, we are going to have, we have courses online and so on, but even though people want to do courses, and when they first arrive in the classroom, is there that kind of thing that, okay, the teacher may deal with this, right? Which is like, I'm a bit skeptical about it. Well, I'm here just to try to be convinced, right? But I'm still not quite on the same wavelength of these ideas, right? So does it happen? This is skepticism.
Do you mean in what case? In what case? Could you give?
And in the case of from students, from Swedish people, for example, are they skeptical concerning these topics, out-of-body experiences, bioenergy? How are they having?
Yeah, I think Swedes are skeptical in general. But having said that, they're also a lot more open because the contact with nature is very innate in the Swedish soul. So, all of Sweden is basically forest with some hubs which are inhabited, and almost like Finland. Finland is all forest. The contact with nature is innate. It's always there. And the old belief in like forest people or they call them the little people of the forest. So that kind of belief is quite ingrained in the Swedish culture. So yes, they're a little bit skeptical when you start maybe going a little bit into conscientiology. The part is very adjustable in Sweden, is my experience, and also actually in the other Nordic countries. And by the way, we say Nordics as it's in one country, but they're 4 separate countries with 4 culturally and linguistically completely separate. They have some in the contact with nature, and the step to energies, as I mentioned, is not a huge step.
I see. All right. Well, for me, as I see, right, because we know lots of the teachers who are working in internationalization by doing participating lives and so on in presentations and speeches and so forth. But we know most of them giving those lectures in Portuguese. But I feel that when they are speaking English, there is some kind of restriction. They don't run freely. They of course they don't speak as freely as they do when they are talking Portuguese, of course. But there are still a certain amount of restrictions or a certain amount of not feeling familiar with the language. Jacqueline, how do you feel that? But the important is that the masses is across, right? That's the most important thing. But how are we doing it? This is, for me, is a big challenge, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think like at the very least, there's the language. I think it's as much as possible. Like we say that the native speaker is the best person to access people, but of course, we don't have native people in different places, so we need to go there and communicate in the best way possible. And as you said, the most important thing is to get the message across, to get the information across. Having said that, I think to understand the group that you are talking to, your target public, you need to understand who they are. And you have various cultural groups, that each of these students, they represent, whether it's like a culture from the place, or it could even be like young people or older people. You need to be able to kind of meet their needs. You need to adapt to them to be able to get the message across. So even the way you dress, even the way you speak, you communicate, for them to be able to create this rapport with you so that you are able to then, pass that message more successfully. So it's many aspects beyond just the language, right? I think.
Yes, and Cicero, we know that we've been working with some editions of the entry course, and we have an activity, a weekly activity, right, in which we have a participation of between 6 and 8 people every week, and we are always talking to foreigners. So, according to your experience, we are talking about the language barrier, which is easily noticed by teachers, but also by the students, right? We have noticed that sometimes, because the thing is that we are residents and the students are from Germany, and sometimes they are from France, and sometimes they are from Romania. So we are talking in a single language, which is not native for any of us. So, it's like it's a foreign language for everyone. And we also have this communication sometimes not difficult, but a bit, laboral with the students to try to understand what they mean, what they really want to. So we also have these language barriers from students, aren't we?
Yeah, I think this is an important topic because it's very common, as you mentioned, it's very common that we use English as a common language, but sometimes it's a foreign language for all participants, both teacher and students. So sometimes, of course, we perceive the students also. Sometimes they simply do not understand the concept because of some words or sometimes also the flexibility of, for example, the accent. Sometimes we speak the word, but not with the right accent, and it makes a big difficult sometimes to understand that word. Sometimes when somebody is from a native English, maybe can understand easier. Sometimes even worse, but sometimes can understand easier because then at least there is no other issues with the language to pay attention too much. So sometimes I think some students needs to really put effort to follow the content in English, and sometimes is an effort that, of course, there is. Uh, you need to split your brain to understand the content and then understand the message. So these are something that usually is a challenge also for the students. And I think this is important sometimes for us to be aware. I really think sometimes it's important for us to speak slower, or depending on the concept, try to repeat sometimes, even though the course or the teaching or the speech is not so fast, but sometimes it's better for everyone to understand. Yeah, so I think this sensibility of the teacher to perceive when the student or the participants really connecting to the message or not, if it's because of the language, if it's because of the content and things like this. So I think this is really important, this level of sensibility, this level of empathy from the teacher to really be open to connect, to be fraternal, to be helpful with the students in all aspects. Yeah, so not only about the content, but really the interaction. This is really very important.
Yes, Jacqueline, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to kind of reiterate or to confirm what Cicero was saying, because I agree with him. It's very important to be able, the teacher needs to kind of to pay attention to the cues, to the needs of the people in front of you, and and to check to see that they're understanding. Sometimes you have to be to talk more slowly, to maybe repeat things a few times, but to really pay attention to where the students are up to, and so that you can communicate with them in the most effective manner possible. But yeah, this empathy is very important. in terms of communication.
Yes, that's right. And I wrote here one of the challenges that we should consider here is the pedagogical, or the way we give classes, right? The pedagogical approach or didactic approach, which is because it's okay. I am a teacher here in Brazil. I teach Portuguese in English, and I have a specific way of giving my lessons, method, right, of addressing students, which is particularly from Brazilians, because I know the Brazilians won't feel the upset or feeling strange because of the way we work. But when we are dealing with different nationalities, different cultures, it may sound sometimes invasive the way we are addressing students, and we have to pay special attention to the way we address people. For example, I like the spot checks. We say spot checks, which is, Jacqueline, do you have any questions? And you go like, Jacqueline, do you have any questions? But we have, I've experienced that sometimes it's not, a very good thing to do when you are working with foreigners, because sometimes people may feel like, what? A pressure to say something. Evelyn, do you agree with that? Because you've been doing courses, right? And participating in activities. How do you see that? The way that Brazilian teachers are doing the classroom. Is that okay? Or there is some differences from the way you are more used to in Sweden?
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone has their own unique teaching method, right? And then you have obviously cultural aspects of it. And as I'm a teacher that's my full-time job as well, right? So one thing I know is, apart from the sensitivities and reading the room and all that, one thing I know, particularly up here north of Germany, to allow silence. People are a lot more reflective here. So you ask a question and you need, as a teacher, to become comfortable with silence. Because people are reflecting, they're thinking. If you push the counter effect, and it's the same thing as calling out people, saying like, Mario, what's your thought? Good idea. Can be, but if you, and we know this, we can read this, right? If you can read that person has a question, then it might work. But I always know it has the opposite effect. So to allow silence and not call people out, I would say, is definitely something that you need to do here when you teach.
That's very worth knowing.
May I add something?
Sure.
I could say also sometimes when there are like presential course, now we are having a lot of online activities, but when it's a presential course, there are, for example, I know some activities in Conscientiology that sometimes in the course or a specific course, for example, there are a technique that is, for example, I've forgotten the name of the technique. Voltaic arc. Voltaic arc. Yeah. And this sometimes, even though it's like an advanced course that is applied this technique, but sometimes for some students, this can be really intrusive if you are coming closer and working with Voltaic arc. So I heard some people that they really think instead of the teacher to be in the position of being like a helper or equivalent in a way that they are supporting, they transmit the message of being an intruder. That's exactly the opposite of was the intention. So these things, I think, sometimes is just an introduction or something. This is part of sometimes of the methodology, the way you teach, that maybe in Brazil you just bypass some things, but I think this more like, I could say also polite way of interacting with people, I think this is well recommended, and I think this is a nice approach. And I think there are many things that comes from that's related to methodology that should change. For example, in Germany, people, and I know other countries too, not restricted to Germany, okay, just giving the example because I live here, but many people are very used to read a lot of books and read content. Sometimes if you are going to teach a subject, they have preference to receive the book or the reference before, read the contents, and then they go to the course to just more debate or do other activities or some practical, more practical things. And sometimes also I think some courses, they can be updated in new methodologies to interact more with these characteristics of studies, not to be too much a theoretical course, but to be more in this direction of more interactive. So I think this is a challenge for all teachers, all institutions that are connecting to this, to be more updated and more connected to these methodologies that will be more effective. So it will not be ancient methodologies of teaching. And this is not easy. I'm just saying this, but it's not something that can be changed like this. It takes time to change, but are efforts that I think they are very important for us to be aware of these things and improve the content, the message, the way, the methodologies. I think this will be very important. Yeah.
Very good,
that's
Cicero. We
it.
have some questions coming from the comments. The first one is from Ednelson Azevedo. Good to throw your question, Ednelson. Thank you. The question is, do you think that some cognitive connections allowed by Portuguese language has influenced the beginning and birth of Conscientiology in Brazil? I think that basically this, if you agree with me, it comes from the Spiritism, right? The Spiritist religion, from the time Valdo was working with Chico Xavier and all those guys, right? What do you think about this?
Yeah, because it's in the Portuguese language, right? So it's it's not the culture, the language itself, which is interesting.
Yes.
The question.
Oh, okay. Connection allowed by Portuguese language has influenced the beginning of the birth. I don't think so.
I don't think the language is the main cause in this aspect. My opinion is not that this is the truth, but just giving my opinion. I think really it's more a cultural aspect. The different energies from the country, the different nature of people, more extroverted somehow. Sometimes this helps to interact and to be more easy to expand some ideas connected to this. And of course, I could say many people in Brazil are connected to parapsychism and so on. So there is originally there was a big group of people that reborn there or start a new life in Brazil, with these ideas of maybe developing more parapsychism or extrasensorial perceptions and things like this. So I think this is more connected. The reason maybe Brazil, but it's not the only country. There are other countries that are quite famous also to use energies and so on. Seems, for example, I don't know very well, but I could research even more about, for example, Indonesia. As I know, there are some groups of people, there are many people that simply is more natural for them to work with energies in a high level, I could say. Yeah.
All right, and we have another comment by Eliane Voslav. Thank you, Eliane, for your participation. The comment is, I think that's very challenging for a Conscientiology teacher to talk about subjects that he still doesn't have experience. For example, certain parapsychic phenomena.
Yeah, I think to some extent, I think that's true. I think but on the other hand, like if you are in the pursuit of, having these experiences and you've had a range of different or diverse experiences of different phenomena, parapsychic phenomena, you just need to, I think, be clear with the student maybe that it's, from what you understand and that kind of emphasize the theorist, having the experience, but, maybe not necessarily having had the experience yourself. But yes, you're not going to have that level of depth and detail into the phenomena until you've actually experienced it. So
Very good. And I would like to have the Evelyn's opinions about it, right? For example, in a classroom, is it important really that the teacher come up with their own experiences, or it's enough to present the researches done so far from the books? It's a very good, interesting thing. I particularly, I'm just giving an example of my opinion. I really like to hear people's experiences. It's good, but maybe the research itself, it's okay if it's scientifically enough, I would say. What's your opinion about it, Evelyn?
Well, I think it's a fine line, because I agree with both Jacqueline and Eliane, because if you have had experiences, of course, you become more credible, because, as Jacqueline says, you have a different depth and you have a different understanding. On the other hand, you can present the theory, but the problem is, if you haven't had the experience yourself, it's all theory and no practice. That's where I find it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found myself, not in conscientiology, but in my regular classroom when I was teaching a subject, and I did not have my personal experience of that subject, what happened was there was a bit of intrusion in the classroom, and they immediately jumped at my weak point. And I sort of not attacked, but well, yeah, I guess it's an attack. So basically, if they see a weakness and there is maybe already a little bit of instability in the room, it can easily become an intrusion. So I think that's where the personal experience and deep experience, that you're a bit guarded against that type of intrusion in that case. I don't know if that made sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's a very good moment to talk about theories. Theories is a neologism from conscientiology that joins two words, theory and practice, right? So that's, as Jacqueline said, the importance of the theory and practice going together. That's very important. But there are some conversations about this in terms of conscientiological teaching when we talk. Is it really important for the teachers to put his own experiences in the classroom to show the students a real experience, or we have some limits to it? We have to be careful about it, not to expose too much ourselves. And there is some very good discussion about this. Cicero, what do you think? Cicero is also from the Technical Scientific Department from ASSIPI. So as you are training the teachers, what instructions do you give concerning this topic?
Good question. Yeah. I think first starting at the basic point, conscientiology means that the teacher has also their own experience. So the teachers needs to have their own experience, not only to know the theory, but also have experience. Of course, we cannot have experience of all types of phenomena, all situations. It's not possible, but at least a basic. It's very important for a basic of different types of experience is quite good to have. But when it comes, for example, to give tips to new teachers and so on, usually what I recommend is that the teacher is very important to connect to the experiences, their own experiences all the time. So many times, for example, in my case, I will just give my example. Many times I present a content thinking on how I did it or how it happened to me, or sometimes I present an example, like a fictitious example. Somebody that met someone in the street and say something, the reaction. Sometimes not all the time, but sometimes that fact happened to me. I have that scene. I was there. So sometimes I'm transmitting my personal experiences in a real case with a lot of energy involved, that I know the example, I know in detail, so I can connect exactly to that phenomena sometimes, and I'm presenting that in the class. So this, I think, can make a big difference, because you are not just saying the theory, you are really sharing your own life during the class, even though sometimes you don't say a word to the students that you was there. Do you understand? So sometimes you can say, I think it's also positive sometimes for the teacher say, one day I was in a shopping center and I saw this fact happening. Somebody just appeared or some phenomena happening. So just saying this is not a problem. Of course, the teacher will not be like a window to to try to show everything. This is not the purpose of the class, for the teacher to be presenting himself or herself in the class. But the importance to connect to experience, I think it's quite positive. It's really very positive whenever possible. Yeah. So
Very
this
good.
is what my feeling.
Great. We have another comment coming from Liliana Alexandre. Thank you, Liliana, for your participation. Liliana says, I am originally from Portugal, where I came across Conscientiology, became a volunteer instructor, and now I live in Brazil, Foz do Iguaçu, via 14 years in London. That's right. We have another comment from Liliana. One of the great things about being an instructor of Conscientiology is that you also learn a lot as you go along. Teaching, it's a two-way activity. Any comments about it? It's a very good thing to say, Liliana.
Yeah, I think a nice comment. And I think this is almost general for almost all subjects that you are teaching. You really have a good you learn a lot when you are teaching. When it comes to a more personal studies, when connect more people, consciousness, the study of consciousness, of course, this is even higher. So this is really interesting for the teacher. There is a concept that we use in Conscientiology that we call consciousness lab, that we have our own lab of experiences all the time. So we activate it. And when you are teaching, you have really a fantastic lab. Many things happen. And you can perceive, you can observe, you can make a lot of experiences, you can make a lot of research, take notes, get information, perceive new situations. So it's, I think it's a huge universe of big variety of experience that you can have. Yeah, so that's great.
All right. Any other comment, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I thought I might mention something as well. I think it's a great comment by Lily. It's very true. We're dealing with multidimensionality as well. So we need to be paying attention to, what's happening, the interaction with ourselves as a consciousness in the field that we're teaching. And, it is this two-way process, not only learning the content, but also dealing with the subtle aspects of your parapsychism, what you're picking up, the pressure, extra-physical pressure, how that the group and the extra-physical companions with this group is influencing you, and the students themselves are, what's it bringing up in you. And it's interesting because I just, because we're talking about the international context.
Yes.
We had a student in Australia, actually, and he was Muslim, and he would, pray 3 times a day. And during, in the breaks in the class, he asked if he could organize to pray, and we organized a space for him. This is about, trying to, understand that this consciousness intermissive in front of us, and he has his cultural religious background. And he was new to Conscientiology. But at the same time, I had to talk about dogma and, and the disbelief, the principle of disbelief, all these things. And yet it generated a strong level of discomfort in me. And I had to, work through that and understand, what's going on. And so all these, the different students and their different micro universes can really, and your process as well. You can learn a lot about yourself and others.
Very interesting. Avenue, would like to add something?
No, I just agree, and I think that the language issue, if that's where did it start? Sorry, where were we? What was the question? What was the original question?
Yes, we are talking about theory and practice in the classroom and different knowledge sometimes that we have to face. And
I think one thing that's imperative, apart from the language barrier that we started talking about that we might have, I think it's imperative to speak in a language that is digestible to your audience. And by that, I mean, try and use words that people understand and not overcomplicate the words. Because I find many times when we're teaching conscientiology, we throw a lot of neologisms at them. And some land, absolutely, but some don't. And I think you're already overwhelmed by trying to grasp the subject itself. So the easier we can make it from people, I think the better.
Definitely. We have one more comment from Liliana. Okay, as completing the previous comment. You learn with the students and you learn with the dedicated extra-physical teams. Yes, I have an experience. I have something to say because I've been teaching conscientiology for quite a while now. I think it's 12 years or so. I started in 2007. So one thing that I have learned from learning conscientiology, which is completely different from teaching English or teaching Portuguese. Teaching conscientiology made me learn something important, which is sometimes doesn't matter how much you have from that experience. The teacher is not obliged to know everything in the world, right? Or having experienced everything that we teach. Of course, there's lots of things that we may not know, like an axo projection, like to leave the body outside of the planet. I have never had it, but we have to teach it how it works and so on based on someone else's or some other researchers' perspectives, right? But for me, what is important for the teacher is the command of the knowledge, the command of the content that he is giving. So what is necessary? It's necessary a serious study, a serious research based on the books, based on the treatises, based on the material that we've got. And then we see how we can deal with our experiences. What Cecil said is very good to use this method, which is not personal, but sometimes it's generical, and you just illustrate the experience from others' perspectives and sometimes a fictional situation. But the importance is how much we command the topic. It's really, really interesting. I'd like just to add this before going to the next comments, because we have more comments coming in. Eliana Voslaw says, but still, though we can study and share the theory and discuss if that makes sense and is coherent according to the consciential paradigm. That was her comment.
Can I just make a comment on what you just said, Mark? I think it's very relevant for us teachers to deepen our own knowledge. It's imperative, right? Herein lies a challenge if you don't speak Portuguese, because as a Portuguese speaker, you can Google for tertulias, you have books in Portuguese, and what we have in English is not, it's a big bulk, absolutely, but it's not all of it. So to find knowledge as a non-Portuguese speaker is a bit of a challenge. And I particularly, for example, like I mentioned, you want to Google for tertulia, you want to participate in discussions, there's a ton going on every week that are lost to us that are not Portuguese speakers.
Definitely, Evelyn. And as you were saying this, I would just throw my suggestion. People from Tertuliario, we need tertulias with English subtitles, don't we? Yeah, it's high time we had it. So it's just a tip for Tertuliario people. All right, we are coming. That's very, very, very important. We have the projectiology translated, but not the Reurbanizatus, right? And the Homo sapiens pacificus, we don't have them translated. So yes, we have a long journey ahead. We have really to roll up our sleeves and work because we have these materials to be translated. Next comment comes from Adina Oprea. Thank you, Adina, for your participation today. In my opinion, language is still an important factor and principal barrier, and the books and courses in English and all the foreign languages should be a priority for all the CIs. Yes, this is what I am saying. I just said that. Yes, and it's important to say that Adina is working constantly, permanently, hardly on translating materials from Portuguese to English, and it's very, very good. Also to Romanian, right?
Romania also as well. And just to clarify, when she says CIs is consciential institutions. So maybe
yes,
some people are not familiar to it. Yeah. So institutions that teach conscientiology that are connected to conscientiology in this case.
Yes. All right. Eliane says, I would like you to comment about the parapedagogical energy field that forms in a conscientiology class, allowing us to do a more extensive clarification task. Very well said. I was just waiting for us to add to our talk the parapsychic perspective. And I think that we've got a good example of this. Who'd like to extend it?
I can start sharing my experience on this. This is an important aspect. When we teach conscientiology, is like that the teacher, together with extra physical team that supports the activity, many times really creates a field that helps the course to be in a better flow of energies, to be in a better level of assistance, to help to sending energies, to clarify in a better way. So there are a lot of support from many times from an extra physical team, but also from the teacher by the intention and proactiveness of the teacher, the capacity of the teacher. We can create a field of energies. So we exteriorize energies, we expand our own energies, and this helps to create this parapedagogical energy field that Eliane was sharing with us this idea. So I think this is really very important. But related to it, I'd like to say something that my experience when teaching, for example, in Germany or some other countries. It seems that this field is even more in tension compared to the fields in Brazil, in my experience. When I am teaching in Brazil, let's say that there is an average level, if I could say this, level of perception of the intensity of this field of energies. It seems that when I'm teaching in Germany, for example, I perceive more intense. So what this means to me, what's the message that I kept from this? Seems that there are more support from helpers here, trying to really help these activities to expand, to really, it seems that there are more need, maybe in Germany, to have more courses like this, more activities like this, because since that, I don't know if there are higher level helpers or more, I don't know how is the extra physical organization, exactly the structure that helps to have more energies. It's not only the energies of the environment, okay? Because in Brazil, sometimes I gave energies, I gave course in place where I have a lot of energy as well. Yeah? But sometimes it's really, I think it's more connected to the extra physical support team that are connected to conscientiological activities. So this is my experience I'd like to share.
Great, Cicero. We have one more question coming from Jairo Meireles. Very good, Jairo. Thank you for your participation. His question is, do you believe that neologism can facilitate or hinder the internationalization of conscientiology? Imagine create neologisms for whole languages. Jacqueline, what do you think about it? I think it's really interesting for you to answer as an Australian native.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
I think for me, in terms of neologisms, like I remember when I listened even to my first talk and I heard all the neologisms, and, you know, for me it makes sense. But I understand that sometimes people are a little resistant to the neologisms, but if you can explain it in a way, you know, it's just like it's a jargon, you know, in any science, different science, there is its own terminology and jargon, specific terms, and, you know, and we're dealing with, you know, new concepts or new ways of thinking about things, and you need a specific language to, you know, to precisely explain it. So for me, I think, no, neologisms, you know, this is the way of expressing, of course, thinking about the needs of the group. You need to, you know, sometimes adapt at the beginning, maybe create like a bridge, simplify a little bit. But I feel, you know, we're talking intermissivist to intermissivist. And I think, you know, if they've had that intermissive course, they're going to be able to understand, even though they may be a little resistant at the beginning. But I think, you know, if they get those ideas, it's about explaining those concepts in a way, a clear way, with examples, with anecdotes, with, you know, but not diluting the neologisms.
All right, good. Any other comments about this, the use of neologism? I think it's a very good, it has raised good discussions about this, right?
I think in terms of neologisms, I think you're absolutely right, Jacqueline. What I do think also is that we need to be careful when we introduce them. So I've been in classes where teachers speak only in neologisms, and if you're new, even if you're into intermissivist, you're not going to grasp the concept. So I think it's blurry and we need to explain it, but I think we don't need to start neologisms.
We have to be careful with this, like maybe a synonym, and then we go from, we have this bridge from a common word to neologism, and then I stop saying the common word and start using the neologism, but with a very clear introduction. Yeah. Cicero.
Yeah, I just remember it's more or less connected to the neologism also, but for example, there are some uses that sometimes in Brazil is not like a problem, but I think internationally it is a problem. For example, for introductory courses in general, in Brazil, it's very common that people say entrance course. And entrance course, people are more skeptical here about the institution, about what they are talking about. So sometimes it's like there is the connection to Scientology that some people create in their minds and make connections. And sometimes if you say entrance, it seems that people are entering some institution or something. It is what people don't want. Of course, they don't want. And some terms, sometimes when it comes just translating to English, don't thinking about culture and things, this can be, I think, can cause us problems. So we need also to rethink sometimes the way to transmit the ideas in conscientiology to be in a better way and better connection to the students in different countries in general.
Very good. And so we've been having a very good participation from people and questions and comments. We have one more question coming from Andre Kitis. What is the importance, in your opinion, of having a physical presence and native structures when presenting the conscientiological ideas in countries with no conscientiological institutions basis?
Ideally, that would be the best, right? To have the presence of native instructors. If I'm understanding the question correctly, you know, to make that first contact, you know, having someone from there, you know, that would be the most ideal. But if that's not possible, I don't think it should stop people from, you know, going to this new country and you know, helping people to access that information. Maybe that native person is there, you know, that will connect and then continue that work. But yeah, of course, a native person without a doubt can connect more strongly with their group, you know, with their own cultural group.
Yeah, and it's very important to mention after this question, because what we are doing now, we Brazilians, we are working on the internationalization of conscientiology, but it's just the first leg of our work. It's the first stage of our work. The second stage is our objective, our goal. For me, is the main goal, the main objective, which is the expansion that will only happen when a native person will start a conscientiological institution in other country. For example, if Evelyn starts an institution in Sweden, and she has a Swedish team of teachers to teach Swedish people, that is our objective. Now, I'm not giving you a tip, right, Evelyn? I'm not giving you a tip. It's just to mention that this is what we're expecting with this work, right? I'm not supposed to, okay, maybe some teachers, of course, are traveling to give courses abroad, but that's not the point. The point is the expansion, right, Jacqueline? Is when we have Australian teachers giving conscientiological classes in Australia for Australian people. That's the expansion. This is what we are heading to. And really, I want to live to see this happening, right? But yeah, we are starting with the internationalization, which is the first part of this process, of this endeavor. All right, we have another comment from, we are with our time over, but let's go through these two comments by Eliane. Is it possible to build neologisms in different languages? We already translated conscientiology in 6 languages besides Portuguese. Cicero?
Yeah, this was just a comment, because there was a comment before. I think it was from Andre. I'm not sure who Jairo. I'm not sure who shared the question before. That the importance to be translated to different languages. And thank you for the contribution, Eliane. Yes.
And that's a very appropriate moment to say that we have the glossary of essential conscientiological terms. And check it out. We have 3 of the authors here: Jacqueline Cohen, Liliana Alexandre, and Eliane Vosloo. They are here with us today talking about this, right? That's very, very nice to say, very appropriate anytime. And Eliane is just saying that soon, I suppose in August this year, we'll have a multilingual thesaurus, Good Vibes. Yes, because this is the first volume, but we are releasing a new volume with 3,000 words, right, Jacqueline? Could you just talk a bit about this as we are talking about neologisms?
Yes, we're in the process. It's been a many years process of trying to complete this. But yeah, it's a thesaurus, 3,000 conscientiology terms, new terms, some basic, but a lot of new terms that have been translated into English. And then they have the equivalents in other languages as well. So yeah, it's very exciting. And the Portuguese version with the equivalent terms in different languages is about to be published. But the thesaurus in English, is something that we hope to be published, the next year or so.
Okay, if you want to have one of these books here, you have to go to Editaris site, which is, I think it's editaris.org, right? The website. Yeah, if our dear monitors can check it out and just place in a footnote here, and it would be very nice. Okay, people. Yes, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye now. This topic would take us about hours to talk about this. Oh, here we go with the... Yes, this is editaris.org.br, right? So if you want to get one of these, just go there and check it out. It's very important if you're studying conscientiology to have this with you. I consult this quite a lot. It's very important book for me. People, thank you very much for your participation. It's important to say our next Let's Talk will take place in June 25th, the importance of polyglotism. Then, what is the final suggestion for those teachers who are planning to give lessons in English? Cicero Schünemann.
Yeah, good. Go ahead. I think this is the important to really study. If you have issues with the language, to study the language. But if you already know English and you are a teacher of Conscientiology, I think it's a very good experience. So I totally recommend to have classes in other idioms. Is quite interesting.
Evelyn, your wrapping up words.
I think it's one of the most important things if you're teaching abroad is to know your audience, study your audience, get an understanding of who they are, what kind of culture, how does it work in this country, and reach out to the network of volunteers all over the globe to get that information.
Very good, very well said. Jacqueline, you are muted.
So I just like to kind of confirm this idea of, you go to a new place, learn about the culture, learn about, the students, what are they interested in? Try to make that connection with them to develop that rapport so that you are able to communicate those ideas better.
Definitely. And I would say that if you want to give lessons in English, you have to turn up the amount of open-mindedness, flexibility, trying to understand, as Evelyn said, to understand the culture of people that you are teaching, knowing more about your audience, and for you not to battle with your words and ideas to improve your English if you need it. I have given English classes for 25 years, and I still study English. So it's something that it's, fundamental, it's mandatory for us to express ourselves freely, to say what we want with accurate ideas, and to really be, say, sincere and honest with our ideas and say what we want to say. And this requires to improve our language skills. So as we are talking in the next, I'm just giving you the tip for the next Let's Talk, right? Which is the importance of polyglottism. That's why I'm saying that. So people, thank you very much for your participation. It's very nice to have you here. Thank you, our guests today, and have a nice weekend, a nice Sunday. Bye-bye.